Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today we have an interesting story out of New York City that actually occurred on Christmas Day, where two girls visiting from Central America, age 16 and age 14, were stabbed by a person who was freaking out at a Grand Central Station restaurant, who supposedly, according to the police, yelled out that he wanted all white people to be dead. And of course, this person is a black man. He also said crackers. He wanted to sit next to the crackers or didn't want to sit next to the crackers. Not exactly sure. There's different quotes from different news outlets, and this is being charged as a hate crime. However, it's not being reported all that seriously by major news outlets, and a lot of places will tell you that it is being reported as a hate crime and that these people were from Central America to obfuscate the fact that the target of this hate crime was actually white people. So that's what I want to talk about today. But before we do, thank you to everybody who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
We had a gut feeling about him that he was definitely going to cause some trouble, but causing trouble means not paying your bill. It doesn't mean stabbing two people. They had no idea he was even there, and he just pulled the knife out of his pocket. He stabbed one girl in the back, and then her sister was getting up to run away, and he stabbed her in the thigh.
So you just heard from somebody who says that this guy, they knew right off the bat, he was going to be a problem. He was going to be an issue. And for those of you who are unaware, the suspect who is arrested in this particular case is 36-year-old Stephen Hutchinson, who of course has a lengthy criminal history that we'll get into a little bit later, and is considered to be a known disturbed person, just allowed to be on the streets of New York City all the time to commit more and more crimes, because why would we ever hold anybody accountable for their actions? Think about bail reform, and think about how you holding a criminal accountable for his dangerous threats, violent attacks, is actually evil white racism, and then sit down, ye evil white racist. Now, these two girls, they were in Grand Central Station. They were having a nice meal at a nice restaurant. This is a very public place. There are a lot of people there. Sure, there is crime in New York City, but contrary to a lot of the not smart reporting that I've seen related to this, New York City is not among the most dangerous places in the United States of America. In fact, if you're watching this video, there is a better than not chance that New York City is actually safer than your particular area, even though crime is elevating in New York City compared to the overall country and other big cities. It is still among the safest because crime is elevating across the country at similar rates, but still, this is a problem that is unique to the new post-bail reform New York City, and that's why I think it is important to address. On top of that, it's a hate crime. It's the most obvious definition of a hate crime, and if the races were reversed and some white guy who was insane, maybe, mentally disturbed, whatever, decided to stab two random Central Americans that he mistook for black people while saying bad things about black people, this would be national news. We would have Jussie Smollett-like performances across our screens, but for some reason in this particular case, and we all know the reason, it is just being reported as a generic hate crime.
It was supposed to be a holiday experience eating inside Grand Central Terminal on Christmas Day, but two teenage girls, ages 14 and 16, got more than what they bargained for, becoming victims of random violence while eating here at Tartanary with their parents. Police say Stephen Hutchinson was at the restaurant too. He was not ordering food. He apparently got into an argument with staff, so they asked him to leave. And that's when he allegedly took out his frustration on the girls, stabbing one in the thigh and one in the back. The girls and their family are visiting from South America.
And also the victims were Central Americans, so it might be meant to make you believe that this was a hate crime against Latinos or Central Americans, or intended to be a hate crime against Latinos rather than what actually went down.
But two teenage girls, ages 14 and 16, got more than what they bargained for, becoming victims of random violence.
So again, pay very close attention to the way that the local news reports this versus the way that it's reported in the New York Post and the way that police are describing it. So according to the local news report, the man decided to take out his frustrations on these girls after he was told to leave. However, according to the New York Post, after he got into this argument with the people working there, he said, "I want to sit next to the crackers," walked up to one of these girls, stabbed her in the chest, nicking her lung, by the way, and then stabbed the other one in the thigh as she fled the scene. So no, it wasn't just random frustrations. Golly gosh gee, this argument made me angry. Totally something not neutral neutral and didn't have anything to do with race, he did this, and then he said he wanted all white people dead. He was angry at white people. And when they showed the staffer, I don't know if this was the particular one that was being argued with, this staffer also looked white, but also might be Latino too, because, you know, us Latins be hiding amongst you. We're taking over low-key on the DL. And of course, in comes all the comments about how Hispanics are actually white, because in Latin America, a lot of Hispanics are considered white. And then the other contravailing comments about how, no, they're not white. Get out of here. You're out of here. Go back to the land of where the Italians used to be.
This family's from South America too.
And I can't believe that, especially in this city, that I read that it's very safety, and that's, I don't know, it's like shocked me.
Now again, this goes to my point before, where comparatively New York City is actually quite safe compared to other places, other cities in the United States of America, especially compared to other big cities in the United States of America. And considering this guy's from Central America, depending on where he is, it's probably significantly safer than Central America. It's not like he was in Baltimore, it's not like he was in St. Louis, it's not like he was in Philadelphia, or any of the other many cities that are significantly worse. By the way, even Los Angeles, significantly more dangerous than the city of New York, but still, these kind of events are becoming more and more common, and this is due in large part to the fact that the NYPD can't do their work, and we can't hold people that are dangerous. And again, we'll go over Hutcherson's record so you can understand why this is such a problem.
Mayor Eric Adams says overall subway crime is down, but
anytime you have incidents in these high-profile locations, it sends the feeling of, people don't feel safe, and that's why we have to make sure we, zero in, make the arrest as soon as possible. And make sure we get those repeated offenders off our streets.
Now again, every time I talk about crime-related data, every time I talk about somebody making the case that crime in any particular category is down, the question that always needs to be asked is down compared to what? Now, during the peak of the Black Lives Matter riots and post the Black Lives Matter riots, subway crime got absolutely out of control in the city of New York. It rose to levels that we hadn't seen in decades. However, it has declined from that point, but not to the pre-Black Lives Matter levels. So when Eric Adams says subway crime is down, what he's saying is that it's down compared to 2022 levels or 2021 levels, not compared to the pre-Black Lives Matter levels, the 2019 levels, which is really what we should be looking for, what we should be expecting, because that was a 30-year trend of declining crime that was broken by the criminal justice reforms that not only set up post-Black Lives Matter riots, but also at the state level. And again, this is a perfect example of that. Let me play you the remainder of the clip.
Hutcherson is known to MTA police and the NYPD with at least 17 prior arrests. Just last week, Hutcherson allegedly threatened a man in Harlem saying he had a gun.
And this is the problem that cuts to the heart of the issue of bail reform in the state of New York and its impacts on places like New York City. So, because of bail reform for a bunch of different offenses, you are guaranteed a same-day automatic release for a bunch of different charges. And apparently included in those charges, and by the way, when I say apparently, I don't mean apparently, I mean it's actually in the law, is making terroristic threats. So you had somebody threaten to kill someone with a gun a week prior, yet he is out on the streets free of charge, despite the fact that if any bail would have been set for him, he likely would have been in Rikers Island, and these two girls would have enjoyed their Christmas at Grand Central Station. This is not the way that things should be, not to mention his other arrests, violent history. We've seen the same pattern over and over and over again. But as I've said a million times, New York State is the only state in the union where judges are not able to assess dangerousness when determining whether or not to hold somebody in custody while awaiting trial. And when you can't assess dangerousness, guess what? These are the results. How many times have we seen crimes? This could have easily been a double murder that could have easily been prevented had they actually held the guy for a recent arrest, had they actually not had bail reform. Now, his history is actually out, and it turns out that Hutcherson has been arrested at least 17 times over the last 2 decades. He was the subject of more than half a dozen arrests for domestic violence by a woman he had allegedly stalked for over a year, according to sources. charges. He also has a string of encounters with the cops for mental health disturbances, most recently on December 5th when he was found acting unruly outside a Bronx apartment building and brought to St. Barnabas Hospital for psychiatric evaluation by the police. Prior to that incident, police officers found him standing on the fire escape of that same building on Mount Home Place, screaming while refusing to come down. According to sources, he was brought to St. Barnabas Hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. Now, there's a lot of other incidents like him walking into a police station house, acting belligerent and refusing to leave, prompting cops to arrest him. They found a dagger and a switchblade on him. This guy was always carrying knives on him. He was charged and pled guilty to misdemeanor weapons possessions, did not do any real time behind bars. In October, he destroyed an $81,000 display at a department store. He pled guilty and ended up only serving a 15-day sentence. Now, on November 7th, which is a little bit over a month before the stabbing, he walked up to a man outside of his job in the Bronx and threatened him. He said, quote, "Why are you working for white people? I'm going to kill this man." According to the victim, quote, "I'm going to shoot you," Hutcherson threatened in the criminal complaint. Quote, "I don't care what kind of green card the government gave you. Open your mouth and say something. I will shoot you right now." They didn't recover a gun, but they found a knife. More on this later. Every single time we come back to New York City, every single time we look at a heinous, ridiculous, absurd crime, what we end up finding out is maybe a month before, in this case a week before, or 6 months before, or a year before, this person ended up committing a serious crime, something that should have been assessed as a threat, something that should have held him in jail awaiting trial, something that should have led to serious criminal charges, which DA Bragg would refuse to press on them, and that is why they were out on the streets, and that is why they were able to commit this more serious crime. And by the way, what do you think's going to happen when these people go back to Central America and they can't show up for court to testify against them in the attempted murder charges? They're going to be pled down to lower counts. Alvin Bragg is already figuring out a way to paint Stephen Hutcherson as the victim, and this pattern will repeat. Dangerous persons after dangerous person ends up being re-released over and over again, and we are surprised to see the same results and the same carnage appear more and more often on the streets of the city of New York. It's absolutely absurd.
I think it's a big problem in New York that a lot of mentally ill people are walking around.
Shut up. Honestly, lady, shut your face. I understand what you're saying. I understand this is the politically correct take to talk about the mental illness of the person who did the stabbing, but I'm sick of hearing it. I'm sick of this nonsense right here. We've said over and over again on this channel that yes, there are mentally ill people on the streets, but the thing is, the problem happened when we started releasing them after they committed violent crimes, after they started threatening people, onto the streets same day automatically without even a hint of bail, with no discretion from the judge in order to assess dangerousness. So unless you're pushing for change in the standard of how we can hold mentally ill people, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about his sad sack life, how disturbed he was, how he's on this list of people that the NYPD need to watch out for, unless that comes with action attached to it. We need to get rid of the standard that you have to already prove yourself to be a danger to yourself or others, and go back to the standard or something closer to the standard of if you cannot take care of yourself, you need to be put in a treatment facility against your will. You need to be committed. I don't want to hear about how they're victims and oh my God, the only thing we could do is leave them on the streets until they pop off, until they stab children. No, do something now. Do something about it today. Fix the problem now. You can't have bail reform and then go super soft and say these innocent angels, they're just mentally ill, like this guy has an issue with anxiety, like he's like a college kid who's worried about his finals. No, that is not what's going on right here. We have incentivized these people to live on the streets. We have gotten rid of the consequences. We have an environment of lawlessness, and when they commit crimes, we refuse to hold them accountable. Until I see some accountability, I don't want to hear about their sad sack life or whatever issue they got going on in their head. Now, just so you understand my frustration with people saying, oh, mental illness, is that they actually did try to get him committed to psychiatric treatment after he received plea deal after plea deal that let him out of jail over and over again. The Bronx prosecutors pushed for it, and over their objection, a judge that was appointed by Eric Adams decided that he was going to give him a conditional release, despite all of the things that I told you about earlier, and despite the fact that he threatened to kill a random person with a gun, and when police arrested him, he had a knife on him. Obvious red flag, he's threatening to kill people.
Grand Central Terminal is not only one of the largest transportation hubs in the country, but it's also a tourist attraction with shops and restaurants. So hearing about what happened to the teens is very concerning.
We do not want to give that kind of image to people to come visit here.
Now look, I know I unnecessarily and randomly went off on this lady right here because she's just a random everyday person, but the thing is, she's wrong here too. You need that image. You want New York City to have that image because guess what? Stigma works. Stigma produces change. I'm so tired of the society that we live in where they say, oh, I'm not judging you. I would never judge you. God forbid I show you any judgment to show that I have any standards for how a society should work. Well, guess what? I am judging you. I am judging your standards. I'm judging on what you allow to happen in your major thoroughfares, in your tourist attractions. I'm judging how you treat your citizens, your victims of crime, by protecting the criminal over them, because I want that stigma to stick with places like the city of New York. I want it to stick with places like the city of San Francisco. I want it to stick with places like Baltimore, like St. Louis, like all these other problem areas in this nation, to the point where people decide that they want to fix it. Yes, I want it associated with what happens to people when they come and they go to Grand Central and they want to have a nice meal on Christmas, because you know what? Until that association is there, until people acknowledge that this is something that is a problem, we can never work on a solution. If we cover it up, if we hide behind the fact, even though it's true that New York City is one of the safest big cities in the United States of America, even with the recent crime increase, that is all utilized to tolerate the increase in crime, because compared to the rest of the country, which is also going up in terms of criminality, we're still proportionately around first place when it comes to safe big cities. No, we want the stigma, we want the judgment. I want people to feel that, because that fear should produce some kind of change.
The suspect faces serious charges, including attempted murder and assault as a hate crime. As far as those teenagers, well, they are expected to be okay.
Now, as you heard right there, some good news. The two teenagers are expected to make a full recovery. Now, what you also heard is that they were recovering in a hospital. So when they see their bill for an American hospital, then they're really going to be horrified. But so far, so good. They're feeling pretty happy in terms of their recovery, but also quite notable is the fact that this local news reporter kind of snuck in at the end that there was a hate crime element to it, and this is how most of the mainstream media, most of the local media, because it's not even getting national coverage, is highlighting this story. They're like, oh, it was an assault, mentally disturbed person, such a sad sack. Some of them will bring up the bail reform issue, credit to the local affiliates for highlighting this issue over and over again, but other than that, they'll just say hate crime and then try to walk out of the side door. It was an anti-white hate crime. We have him yelling out his motivation. Had this been any other race of perpetrator against any other target group, you would be reporting it as such, but guess what? You're not interested right now because it was an anti-white hate crime, so everybody's kind of downplaying and ignoring the fact that even though this guy's a mentally disturbed person, even though it is true that he had a long series of arrests that could have been held up by bail reform, that he was screaming out the same anti-white rhetoric that is being put forward by the mainstream left, by the Democratic Party, and by news outlets across this country. But you know what? When we talk about how crazy political rhetoric can trigger people who are mentally ill, that's only for the right wing, that's only for the conservatives, that's only for blaming Tucker Carlson, that is not for any form of consistency or anything like that. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links. They're in the description of this video. This has been me talking about an anti-white attack that is being downplayed. Till next time.